Will Louisville go after Chad Baker-Mazara?
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Happy Friday. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show. And I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. One thing that I think is really important about this show is that we seriously consider your all's, the viewers/listeners input on what you want to hear discussed. And multiple people reached out to me on Thursday asking if I could talk about this and discuss whether or not the Louisville Cardinals will go after Auburn transfer Chad Baker-Mazara. Pretty intriguing news that he's entering the portal. We'll discuss how realistic of a chance Louisville could have, his connection with Kasean Pryor, and much more. We'll get into some football talk as well. Some recent defensive departures to the portal, Darius Thomas and Wu Spencer. We'll also talk about Jeff Brohm wanting to bring in some offensive help. Cardinals being linked to Illinois State wide receiver Xavier Loyd and Utah tight end CJ Jacobsen. So great show coming today. Do apologize for not having an episode yesterday. Wasn't planning on not having an episode. That's just how things unfortunately ended up. So I want to say I'm sorry in regards to that, but still we're going to make up for it. A lot of questions regarding this specific player entering the portal, and there were some pretty key names entering the portal on Thursday. Technically, you have to do so by, I think it's the 22nd. So you're seeing some pretty key names enter. One of those names being Auburn starter Chad Baker-Mazara. He started 34 of the 38 total games for the Tigers Final Four squad. And with his connection to Kasean Pryor, it has sparked an immense discussion on social media as to whether or not Louisville will go after CBM. Now, for starters, Chad Baker-Mazara is 25 years old. He's one of the oldest players in college basketball. He has an extra year of eligibility, meaning that next January he will be playing college ball and will turn 26 in his final season. Now, people ask, well, how is that possible? He started out his college career playing for Duquesne during the 2020-2021 season. So that's where the quote-unquote extra COVID year comes into play. He played for San Diego State for a year. And then the past 2 years, he's played at Auburn. So there's 4 seasons. You get the one back at the beginning of COVID. But where does that second additional season come into play, that 6th year? Well, it comes from him playing at the JUCO level during the 2022-23 season at Northwest Florida State, which is where he played with, I guess you could say, current Louisville forward Kasean Pryor. We're still waiting to hear whether or not Pryor stays or goes. At this point, it seems like all signs are pointing to him staying, but we don't have that official word. Stranger things have happened, so I'm not going to assume until he makes that decision. But Pryor and Chad Baker-Mazara were on vacation together last week, I believe in the Dominican Republic, which is where Chad is from. He's from Santo Domingo. So not only were they teammates a couple years ago, but I would imagine that they are good friends if they're going on vacation together. Well, on Thursday, he unexpectedly, I feel like for the most part unexpectedly, entered the portal, which sent a lot of people into a shock. And you're like, excuse me, what? Auburn was losing 4 of the 5 starters. Now there's a chance that they're going to lose all 5 with CBM now in the portal. But, I mean, the fit makes sense, right? The big question for me is I felt like when Louisville went 3 for 3 in the portal early on, Kelsey identified his top 3 prospects in the portal, got all 3 to commit and sign, and since then the Cardinals have just been chilling. Javon Hadley announced his return. We're waiting on Kasean Pryor. If he doesn't come back, then you pivot. But it seems like, all things considered, what I've gathered is that it's Pryor and then maybe another rotational piece or two at the end of the rotation, and you're pretty much done. So is there a reality where the Cardinals not only look to bring Pryor back, but also another top player? I don't think the Cardinals spent as much as people want to think in terms of NIL for the 3 transfers that they brought in. I mean, they had a sizable NIL war chest for the portal. And that's not even taking into consideration the funds that they had for Kasean Pryor. So do they have the funds to go out and bring in a guy like Chad Baker-Mazara? I talked to a friend of mine on the Auburn scene, and Tiger Source, and I asked him, I said, why? Why did he enter the portal? What's your take on the matter? It was pretty short and to the point. He wanted more money. Auburn deemed he wasn't worth it. That is beginning and end quote. Pretty short, but pretty straightforward. So are you willing to meet Chad's demands? And if you are, that is one piece to the puzzle. The overall question of will Louisville go after CBM, I think that there is a level that I'm wanting to see them reach before I get to that point. I think that they're going to do some introductory gauging, like, hey, we understand you have the connection with Kasean. They're probably going to find out what's the financial demand, what's he looking for in terms of a role, and much more. Because you don't bring in a player like Chad Baker-Mazara and put him on the bench. He is going to be a starter if he comes here. At 6'7", 180 pounds, he was one of the key pieces for a Final Four team. I doubt that he's going to take a reduction in role. The next question is the most important, and this is where I kind of struggle to get a good glimpse into things. You already have a really crowded rotation. I mean, you've got the guards, you have Hadley back, you have Kenai Ruths, you've got 3 big men. Where does Baker-Mazara come into play? Like, and look, I've been pretty adamant that I am one of those people that believes that you should always look to upgrade your team and figure how to make things work later. But this would be challenging. This would be challenging because let's say, I mean, if you bring Chad in, the assumption is that you're bringing Kasean in as well. Like, if there is a connection there in terms of him going to the portal and maybe Louisville being involved, that's where it would make sense. But until I hear something in regards to that, I'm going to just sort of write it off as mere fan discussion. It seems like Illinois was a team that was mentioned by someone. We don't really have anything concrete to go off of right now. And look, by the time you're listening to this, whether it's as it premieres on Friday morning at midnight or at whatever point Friday, this is being recorded at 9 p.m. on Thursday. What's not true right now could end up being true later on in the day. I don't know. Things change so quickly in the portal. But at this point, I mean, I think Louisville will kick the tires and maybe entertain the thought, but I'm not sure how serious this gets. I think that it's more so a fun hypothetical for Louisville fans to be able to take that connection between the two players and sort of run with it as, oh, look, the Cardinals are going to go get him. And I'm not sure that I would have really discussed this as much if multiple people didn't ask me to. I have no problem discussing it. I just don't know how serious the interest is from both sides. And, like, does this thing have legs? I'm just not so sure. But back to the fit portion of this, Baker-Mazara at 6'7", 180 pounds, he's going to be your wing player. Shoots 38% from 3, 45% from the field, 89% from the free throw line, averaged 12.3 points a game, 2.7 assists, 3.0 rebounds. Like, I don't think he plays your 4. I know it's positionless basketball, but I don't think he plays your 4. meaning that I don't think that you're going to start Baker-Mazara at the 4 and Pryor at the 5. Like, I think he is your 3, and you're rotating guards off the bench. So that makes things a little bit more complicated. Is okay. Javon Hadley, like you have a group, like let's say that theoretically you do get Chad to commit, and your starting 5 is, I don't know, let's say Michael Brown Jr., Ryan Conwell, Chad Baker-Mazara, Kasean Pryor, and Sananda Fruit. The big man conversation, I mean, you're rotating Ali Khalifa and James Scott. At the 4, it's probably Javon Hadley at that small ball 4, being the backup to Kasean Pryor. But you have 2 guards in Isaac McNeely and Adrian Woolley, who are going to play a ton. So they're clearly going to be your reserves. Kenai Roots is going to have to play. There's just so many mouths to feed in that scenario, and somebody's bound to be unhappy. Like if CBM and Pryor were to both come to Louisville, I could see someone transferring out. I could see maybe Kenai Roots saying, you know what, I need to go somewhere where I can get some more minutes. I don't know. That's just thinking from a logical standpoint. So I would be all for it if you could pull it off. He brings a perimeter toughness that you need. He is a seasoned veteran that has played a ton of basketball, that has played in big moments. He was a part of one of the best teams in college basketball last year. So, I mean, the fit makes sense on the court. It's just a matter of, even with a system that substitutes so often, how would you make it work with all of the players that you have? I'm not saying it's impossible to do. Just saying that it would be tough, but I'm still not convinced that this thing has legs just yet. Like I would have to hear that Louisville has concrete interest on bringing him to Louisville for a visit. Like Baker-Mazara might be interested in the Cardinals, but I want to see Pat Kelsey's willingness to go out and get another big-time player, because at this point, I'm convinced that it's Pryor and a couple of other into the rotation guys to just sort of fill out the roster. But we'll see. We'll keep our ear to the ground and see what happens at this point. But for the remainder of the episode, I want to dive into some football talk. The Cardinals have been losing some players to the portal, most recently 2 players on defense. We'll discuss how large of losses these 2 players entering the portal are when we come back on this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? If you turn any TV into a gaming system and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices with no console required, just grab your pair controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go with premium titles like EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and many more. With Wi-Fi 6/6E and auto low latency mode, advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive, and it's affordable, and you have the option for portable gaming. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Cardinal fans, thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Just another reminder, I mentioned this a couple days ago. I'm going to reiterate it again and repeat it. I am going to be traveling a good portion of next week. I will pre-record episodes for Tuesday and Wednesday, but there'll only be 3 episodes next week. So I'm crossing my fingers that nothing notable happens at the end of the week, because I'm going to have to try to find out how to do somewhat of a pseudo recording while I'm out of town. So just a heads up on that, and don't be alarmed when you only see a couple of recordings. But the spring portal window for football is open briefly from April 16th to April 25th. April 16th. Do want to take the time to thank you all for all of the happy birthday wishes. Definitely was a good day. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. You're going to see things moving really quickly. The Cardinals have lost a couple players to the portal already. Two of the most recent ones, outside linebacker Darius Thomas and defensive lineman Wu Spencer. Darius Thomas committed in the winter from Western Kentucky. And look, I say this, and I don't mean to sound like I'm being sour grapes because I know that this helps Louisville as well. But this is just my overall thoughts. There shouldn't be a second portal window in football. I just don't feel like it's needed. Like, what is the benefit to it other than teams just waiting to poach players from other schools? Like, it's hard to get excited about spring football because a guy can play on a Friday night in the spring game and decide he wants to transfer on Saturday. I think there should be one portal window that's in the winter. If you need to extend it by 10 days, then okay, that's fine, do so. But I just don't see the benefit. Like, there's more harm than good by having a spring portal window. Like, I don't see the benefits mainly. There has to be some type of regulation that gets thrown into the mix, and I think that it starts with just one football portal window. But I'm off of my my monologue at the moment. Darius Thomas, I felt like was going to be in the two deep at linebacker. He practiced with the ones at times in the spring. I'm not sure if he would have been a starter with guys like TJ Capers, Stanquan Clark, TJ Quinn, and Caleb Perry. So I ultimately felt like he was going to be a pretty valuable depth piece. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you, oh, it doesn't matter because he wasn't going to play. I think that he would have played to an extent. I'm not sure if he would have been a starter, but I do feel like he would have at least been valuable depth. And that's something that, I mean, it sucks that you lose a player of that caliber. I had some high hopes for Thomas. Had 54 tackles last year for the Hilltoppers, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble. You did question how the transition was going to go from the mid-major level to the Power 4, and that was always going to be something to focus on, but not going to have to focus on that any longer. He ends up going to the portal. Could that have been an indication that he wasn't going to be a starter? Potentially. I liked what I saw from TJ Capers in the spring game. TJ Quinn is a guy that knows that linebacker room. Caleb Perry, the transfer from Tennessee, the Kentucky native, has had a good spring. And even though he's had a small injury that's not supposed to affect him long term, Stanquan Clark is your star linebacker. So I could see a situation where Thomas says, you know what? I want to go somewhere where I can be playing 90% of the snaps. And who knows? Maybe it wasn't Louisville. Maybe it was. And someone decided, I'm going to go get Darius Thomas out of the portal. But, oh, well, another player that entered the portal, this one hurts a little bit. Wu Spencer. Started his high school career out at Louisville Male High School, which is where I went to high school as well. Proud Bulldog alum. He went across the bridge to play for New Albany High School to end his high school career. Really highly rated high school recruit. He was a 4-star by multiple sites. 6'5", 305 pounds. There was some discussion as to whether or not he was going to be an offensive or a defensive lineman at the college level. Well, the Cardinals decided we're going to turn you into a defensive lineman. He ended up enrolling at Louisville in May of 2023, but just really hasn't seen much of the field. Like last year, he had 4 total tackles. He appeared in 3 games, so he was able to preserve that red shirt. But I think that this is just a situation where, unfortunately, passed up on the depth chart. Louisville had Renee Conga and Jordan Girard return. I just think that there are some other players that have passed him up on the depth chart. Thought that he could be a guy next year that you look for on the interior to make some noise, but we won't get the chance to see that happen, or at least we don't think, unless he were to ultimately rescind his name from the portal, which usually that doesn't happen. But I'm just holding my breath and hoping that the Cardinals don't lose like a projected starter in the portal. They've done a really good job of retaining their players in the portal for the most part, like guys not going to the portal, I should say. These are two losses. Like, it sucks because you never want to see players go, but two that I do think that Louisville will be able to withstand and be able to move forward. Switching things over to the offensive side, it's pretty clear that Louisville is looking to add a third receiver to go alongside Colin Lacey and Chris Bell, and also potentially looking to add a tight end as some injury insurance. We'll discuss Xavier Loyd and CJ Jacobsen when we come back on this Friday edition of the show. Card Nation, not too late to get your questions in for next week's mailbag. Be sure to enter those questions on the or over the weekend, just before Monday. You can do it via the YouTube comments or send me a message on Twitter. Just get your comments and questions in before the weekend ends. Louisville is still looking to put the roster together. I think something that we saw during the spring game, and even with the departure of JoJo Stone, Louisville needs some depth at wide receiver, and they need someone to step up at wide receiver 3. So if the Cardinals can go out and get that third option in the portal, I think that it would be smart for them to do so. They have reached out to Illinois State wide receiver Xavier Loyd, according to 24/7 Sports' Alan True. Louisville, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin are just 3 of the teams that have reached out. There honestly are a ton of teams that have reached out. And for good reason. The 6'2", 195-pound native of Blue Springs, Missouri, had 66 catches, 912 yards, and 6 touchdowns for the Redbirds this past season. He started his college career out at Kansas State, only had a catch for 16 yards as a freshman, and the 6'2", he's listed as a junior, just was completely efficient in contested catches, big-time playmaking, and making defenders look foolish. He exceeded really well at the non-Power 5 level, so now the question becomes, he didn't really do much, or I'm sorry, Power 4. He didn't really do anything at the Power 4 level to begin with, but with more experience, is he now ready to jump back into that level of play and be the third option? And for the Cardinals, I mean, look at the past 2 years as the third receiver in a Louisville offense, especially one that's going to run the ball a ton with the Isaac Brown-Duke Watson duo. They're not being asked to do too much. Like, a lot of the targets are going to go to Bell and Lacey. They're looking for an option that can take some of the pressure off of those two, create some separation, and be a big-time playmaker. I mentioned that if you could go out into the portal and get a home run threat, take the top off of the defense caliber weapon, that would be a best-case scenario. I think Bell can do that. He's getting better and better. Lacey's not really so much a deep threat as he is a catch the ball on the short and intermediate routes and just make life miserable for the guys trying to tackle him. I want to see a guy that's able to give you that deep playability like you got with Ja'Cory Brooks last year. Not saying it's going to match up to that level of production, but if you can get a reliable option in the portal to be able to compete with guys like Antonio Meeks and Chris Hughes and Jaden King, then at the very least you're giving yourself some injury insurance and giving yourself some depth at the wide receiver spot, because Louisville really can't afford to lose anyone else at that spot due to injury, due to a lack of numbers at the moment. We're sort of seeing that issue with the tight end spot. I really liked what I saw from Jaleel Skinner in the spring game. More of an H-back because he's like a taller wide receiver, but continually getting into that tight end build. He entered the portal and decided to rescind his name out of the portal and stay with the Cardinals. Jamari Johnson has left. Mark Redmond graduated. So it's Jaleel Skinner, Nate Kariski in the spring game. Grant Hauser and Dylan Mesman were both injured. And maybe you want to get another player in the portal to give yourself some injury insurance. Now, CJ Jacobsen doesn't have any stats to his name at the moment. The 6'4", 235-pound native of Meridian, Idaho, was a player that the Cardinals wanted in high school. I think it was Scott Satterfield wanted CJ Jacobsen to be a Cardinal. He ended up going to Utah, didn't get much of an opportunity during his, I think it was it freshman season? Was he a redshirt freshman potentially? I got to look at this. He was in the class of he was in the 2023 class. So this will be his redshirt sophomore season. And you're looking for a player that maybe you believe in the skill set. Like, I think that because he's going to be on campus on Monday, there's serious interest. What did we talk about all portal window in the winter? This offseason and last offseason. If the Cardinals bring someone on a visit, there is serious mutual interest. And if you feel like you have some good players with Kariski and Skinner and Mesman and maybe Hauser, that's great. But hey, I want to add some injury insurance, a guy that can give me valuable depth. And if his number's called, he can get into the game and give us some good stuff. And I think that that's sort of what the play is here with a guy like CJ Jacobsen. There doesn't seem to be much at the tight end position in the portal. I would have loved to have seen the Cardinals go get Tanner Koziel from Ball State, who committed to Louisville last offseason, then went back to Ball State. Then he got back into the portal. Then he committed to Wisconsin. Then he went back into the portal recently. In less than 24 hours, he goes to Houston. So, oh well. I do think that tight end has been a spot where the production has lacked a little bit, but it's okay because there's been a ton of firepower elsewhere. So I'm really intrigued to see who Louisville targets because at this point, the portal window, it's not too long. It's not going to be something where the Cardinals can do their due diligence for the most part. Like, you have to target your guys and go get them. And I'm really intrigued to see who Louisville goes after. So, like I mentioned, next week is going to be pretty weird. I hope we get a Kasean Pryor announcement before that because I don't want to be out of town and that announcement hits and there's no episode and you all are like, okay, man, what are we doing here? So don't be in the YouTube comments at the end of next week saying, well, where are you at? Where are you at? There's no episode. I understand. I told you beforehand. I'm sorry. Just one of those things that I can't control. But we will start those recordings on Sunday evening and Monday as well. Tuesdays and Wednesdays episodes will be pre-recorded. So just a heads up, that's going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day, great weekend. We'll see you right back here very soon. Go Cards.